Victoria Ambulance, based mostly in the inner city with a career extending over 20 years, he has a strong interest in the clinical management of substance use outside the hospital environment. Please welcome Alan Eade.
It's a tough act following, Sean, so I'm sorry to inflict myself upon you. Thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here to speak. There'll be nothing flash up on the screen, so I'm sorry you've stuck with my ugly head. Today I'm going to talk about the impact of fentanyl. We're able to try and tease that out on emergency services and how we can best work as a unit, that's us and the community, to ensure people don't die from this particular problem. Ambulance Victoria is pleased to work with the Pennington Institute. We've been doing that for quite some period of time. In fact, ever since it first existed, and in its annex days was when we first found relationships. We partner with not only our messaging, but with also the community programs. Ambulance Victoria supports the community programs like COPE because they genuinely make a difference. They genuinely actually save people's lives. Right? And so please, it's not all about what we can do, it's actually about how we can help all of us provide better care to the community. Opioid cases for Ambulance Victoria are available. The data is reported annually and on the AOD Stats website run by Turning Point. So the numbers are available. If you want to go and see by local government area how many cases we attend for any particular substance of misuse, it is available. And the 2016-17 data is the most recent version. The numbers are a little bit difficult to interpret, so you'll see that if you do go there, that there's this category called all heroin, which has actually got two subgroups, where we really think it's heroin, and where we don't know what the hell it is, but it looked like heroin, and that's where the fentanyl group is probably most reasonably captured. There's also an opioid pharmacotherapy group, but it's mostly the buprenorphines and the methadones that are in that group, but there's always the potential that that could include some of the fentanyl patients. There's an opioids group, which is separate again, and then there's an analgesics group, which is separate again. We don't know where the fentanyl actually ends up, because we don't test our customers, we don't test our clients, okay? So we base our information around what they are able to report to us and the way they present. Right? So take the numbers with a grain of salt, okay? And these are only the patients where that particular substance use is the most likely cause or is identified as the main reason for their presentation. So if you happen to use your heroin or your fentanyl and step out in front of a car, you've probably been coded as a road trauma and you won't appear in these substance use statistics. So if anything, they're an underrepresentation. Okay. So with all those qualifications out there, we estimate that the opioid burden on Ambulance Victoria on an annual basis sits somewhere around about the 4,000 cases per annum mark. Okay. Put that into context, we go to 27,000 intoxications for alcohol. Okay, but we only go to, on the opposite direction, it's about 1,700 presentations for stimulant-related drug use. So the prescription medications like benzodiazepines are higher than the opiates. So we go to a large number of cases and they are all different and the trend changes over time. So the trend that is changing for us at the present moment in time is that we had a really huge rate of heroin presentations leading up to the glut of the around 2000 and heroin sort of plummeted right off. So we went down to less than 500 cases per annum. Yeah, the Great Drought of 2000. Our case rate plummeted in 2000. You happy with that?
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. So the case rate plummeted in 2000, and it's been progressively returning ever since in an upward trajectory. Okay. We saw, as Sean was saying, that we were using a lot of OxyContin through the 2010s, and after the change in the formulary, The rate of oxycodone use that's presenting for emergency care by ambulance has it also gone down, and we are now returning to see the heroin numbers climb even further. All right? So the heroin numbers are growing at between 100 and 200 cases per annum, and have been doing so year on year. When it comes to prescription opioids, I just mentioned the prescription opioids, so oxycodone was the one that gave us the greatest problem. When we talk about fentanyl, it depends on how we're trying to interpret it. Sean's done a great sort of presentation of how you use it. So we have some people who will obtain, by whatever means, patches, and will stick lots of them on. So if you find the person who's got respiratory depression and is unconscious in the street, one of the things that we had to go about teaching our workforce was to actually look at their skin, because they would find multiple patches. And if you take all of those off, that will help you in the waking up process, most definitely, and in the resuscitation process. It means you have to give less naloxone. The other aspect is the people who are trying to inject, and Sean's explained the process for doing that. The dose that you get when you inject, when you've taken the gel from the fentanyl patch, is unpredictable and can be incredibly potent. Right? So it depends on how somebody is accessing their fentanyl. In those two circumstances, it's a deliberate use of fentanyl as an agent. What we are seeing is that there has been fentanyl, or any of its analogues, whether it's Sue, Remy, Al, whatever type of fentanyl, contaminating the heroin supply for a number of years. This is not a brand new problem. Right? This has been occurring for quite a few years. Okay? And so when you see the bad batch or something similar to that on the street, the potency of the heroin hasn't changed in great number. It's frequently got an adulterant in it. That results in an increased number of people presenting with overdose, and that creates a problem for us to manage and deal with. In that second circumstance, the people who are using their opiate weren't intending to use fentanyl. They have been an inadvertent exposure to using fentanyl, and as a result, they have had an overdose. So depending on how you go about accessing your drug, you can have an inadvertent exposure, or you can deliberately take fentanyl. If you are deliberately using fentanyl, you are at great risk of overdose. The amount of the contamination within the supply varies, and pure replacement of the heroin supply with fentanyl hasn't happened in Victoria. Okay, so we haven't seen someone who thought they were buying heroin given a full sachet of fentanyl, all right, and overdose that we are aware of. Okay, because that would be a very significant shift. The other thing, the mention of carfentanil is quite topical, and it's all over the news, and there's not a week goes by that I don't get asked the question. All right? But carfentanil, whilst it has been reported as being found, we're talking about in minuscule doses in the heroin supply, we're not talking about seizures of pure carfentanil. It hasn't been identified in overdose in this state as yet, that I've been made aware of. So, how do we deal with it? Okay. We don't put extra ambulances on when we see that there's extra overdoses. We just have to use the resources that we have available. And we have heaps of resources available because we have all of you. Right. First aid is the very first intervention which saves lives, and I cannot stress it enough. The COPE program makes a real difference. Learning to access call for help, learning how to do CPR if the patient is not breathing, and learning how to administer naloxone makes a difference. Doesn't matter if the ambulance is 2 minutes away. If there's somebody who is able to start the basic resuscitation process before that arrives, the patients are always likely to have a better outcome. We have people who are providing first aid without the access to naloxone, and that makes a difference. All right? If you have access to naloxone on top of that, it's even better. We have our fire services who are responding for patients that we believe are unconscious and not breathing. Right? They help us. If they get there faster than an ambulance, then they are able to work with you to do CPR or to ventilate, provide oxygenation where it's needed. The big thing that has just started within the state of Victoria is a crowdsourced medical responder application called Good Sam, which is being promoted and driven by Ambulance Victoria, whereby if you have a smartphone, at some point, registered trusted responders such as doctors and nurses and emergency service personnel will be able to register with this app. Your phone will wail like a banshee if you are within 500 metres or 400 metres of a patient who is unconscious and not breathing. And 3 people from the community will respond to help ahead of the responding ambulance, fire truck and anybody else. It's another way that we can get help to people who are unconscious and not breathing faster. So you may find that some guy in his running gear, a bloke in a suit, and the dude who happens to be serving hot dogs at the vending machine drop tools and come in to help you or your friend if you have a cardiac arrest. There was a question.
Is this an app on the phone?
It is. Yeah, so it's an app.
So if you're trained in whatever, you register and then something happens and you're in GPS here, your phone goes off.
That's it.
Okay.
You've got it in one.
Right.
Absolutely. Crowdsourced medical response. Right? Not quite Uber healthcare, but close. Okay?
I see that there's 2. Which one is which? There's a responder and there's an alerter.
There is. So the responder is the people who are going to be responding. We don't use the alerter service within large, well-structured populations that have got good phone service and a 000 service, which is exceptionally powerful. So, so it'll be the responder app, and you need to register with Ambulance Victoria and have. There's lots of information on the Ambulance Victoria website around how to do that. It's not available for people outside of Ambulance Victoria at the moment. It's in its test phase, but we have already responded to 22, I think it is, as of last night, cardiac arrests since it was turned on in January. And so the results are very, very good. More people getting help sooner is the intent, is the aim. Sorry, ma'am. So.
Will you be looking at pilot programs to roll that?
No, we plan on it started in its. We're testing the technology within the Ambulance Victoria community, just at this point in time, with the intent that we will not test it. We will roll it out to our trusted responders. So, because 70% of the cardiac arrests, and that's what we're targeting, not just overdose, cardiac arrests occur in people's homes. Okay. We need to make sure that we validate the people that we are targeting to respond to those sorts of cases. So it won't be available to every member of the public, but if you are a registered health professional or work for an emergency service, then we are asking you to participate. And that will start, I don't have the rollout date just yet. So at the back, and I'll come forward. Yep.
What is the app called again?
Sorry? Good Sam.
Good Sam.
To the gentleman.
I work in a peer-based program. I don't have a medical background. We do respond to overdoses quite regularly. Will this be available for us, or do we need to have a medical background?
At the moment, it's for registered medical health practitioners. So if you have a registration with the APRA, or if you are a member of an emergency service, where it extends to in the future, time will tell. But we are after people to participate because we think it is advantageous. And I want to make it really clear, I don't want you to stop responding if you find out there's a problem. Okay? All right. We rely on you, ma'am. Everyone else does that. Everybody else needs it.
I was just gonna. Does it include the AED map that Good Sam has overseas?
Yes, it does. So it includes the AED map, which is an AED is an automatic external defibrillator, yes, so the people who are closest to the case also get told where the nearest defibrillator is, so that they can source it and take it to the scene as well.
Why don't they have naloxone in with defibrillators?
They don't have naloxone with defibrillators because, one, it's a drug and it costs money. Two, the shelf life of the naloxone is far shorter than the life of the battery or the life of the pads or the life of the defibrillator. And three, it would stop me having wonderful programs like COPE going out and actually supporting people in showing people how to use this really, really effectively. All right. Randomly picking up syringes and jabbing them into people doesn't necessarily always work so well, and there is no easy supply of an auto-injecting naloxone device just at this point in time, such that we have with adrenaline. But unfortunately, that's why. So once we've got people there to provide airway support and to ventilate, do CPR, that's whether it be a crowdsourced model, whether it's our first responders from the fire brigade, whether it is you walking down the street, or you've been trained by the COPE program, all right, that patient should do well, because the opioid, the fentanyl, causes the respiratory depression. If we can stop, if we can provide artificial ventilation for them by CPR, then they should not progress on to have their heart stop and die. Okay? The action that is life-saving for patients who have had an opiate overdose is ventilation, right? Supplementing their ventilation. So CPR gives them that. If the fire brigade turn up, or if you happen to have some medical equipment, then there's bags you can use to provide ventilation, but that's the thing they need. So once you're providing that, you'll see that the paramedics, when they arrive, don't rush to open the drug bag, don't pull out the naloxone fast. All right. So I'm just going to try and manage some expectations. We then start working out, we check the patient from top to bottom, we work out that it really is an opiate overdose, that they really are being ventilated very well, fix that. Make sure that we're not missing anything else, that they don't have a head injury, that they're not having a hypo, that it's not anaphylaxis, that it's not something else. And then decide whether or not naloxone's the right thing. Okay? So it's not about rapid administration of the naloxone straight up. The thing that will save people's lives is you doing CPR or the ventilation. The naloxone just then reduces the amount of time they remain unconscious, or reduces the amount of time that they remain respiratory depressed. If we're going to give naloxone, if you've given it, it's a much smaller dose. The Ambulance Victoria dose is very large, and it makes people feel unwell. Right. Let's just leave that there. In the event that the naloxone is unable to reverse the effects of whatever the opiate is, it's quite simple. It's not a bad problem. It's not the end of the world. That person ends up in hospital. It's what ambulances do. We're very good at taking people to hospital. Do it 500,000 times a year. Okay? If the patient thought they used heroin and happened to get, in a dreamland, fentanyl, the naloxone's unlikely to work. That's okay. They need a lot more. The safest place to give somebody lots and lots and lots of ongoing naloxone isn't the street. It's in a hospital. Right? So they're going to end up where they need to be effectively cared for. Sorry, mate. Yep.
Is there issues associated with incorrectly administering naloxone, for example, if it isn't an opioid overdose and you administer naloxone?
Very, 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 very few. I would suggest I'd rather see you give naloxone. Okay? So what we've had in the COPE program is people who have gone through, they've learnt the call for help, the do CPR, they think that they need it, give naloxone thing. And we had a 70-year-old bloke keel over in the street, right, who got a call for help, got some CPR, and he got naloxone. He didn't need the naloxone, but it made no difference to the fact that they actually resuscitated this bloke and he walked out of hospital. So, give naloxone. At any time you're worried, use the naloxone. All right? Remembering that there are other parts of the process are call for help and provide good first aid, all right? Because it's the ventilation that is actually life-saving. Okay? So the CPR. Ma'am.
I'm curious as to whether Ambulance Victoria is bound to contact the
Police after an overdose, because sometimes that's what people are concerned about
Sure.
in terms of calling the ambulance.
No worries. So is Ambulance Victoria required to call the police? Absolutely, categorically no. Okay? In fact, we don't. Now, I'll qualify that by saying, if you try and hurt us, we'll call the police. If you're in control of a motor vehicle, we may call the police, depending on, we're likely to stop you driving somehow, okay, because that's a risk to the public, all right? If you are in control of a pram with a baby in it, we are going to call the police. But we are not required to notify the police. Now, what are the police going to do? Across the country, across Australia, the police forces have a unified agreement on this particular point. All right? They will check, if they arrive at a scene where there is somebody who's had an overdose, they will find out whether you have outstanding warrants. That's just police, that 101, all right? Must use computer system, find out if you're bad. Right? They will do that, but they will not prosecute you for the overdose. They are not interested in the fact that you have sustained an overdose at this point in time. If you have 500 pills in a plastic bag down your jocks, you're in trouble. But if you had an overdose, they are not interested in prosecuting you for the overdose because they want you to access care and help in the event that you have an overdose at any future time. Being in contact with the police should not be the disincentive that it is constantly perceived as. Ma'am.
Is Ambulance Victoria working with Victoria Police in regards to people carrying naloxone? Like, are the police aware of it? And I know some clients that I've had are quite scared to carry it because of what the police would say if they had it on them.
No, so the police are aware of the COPE program. I'll let...
Police aren't only aware of it, the Victoria Police were actually on the original reference group that's set up. So the police aren't just aware of naloxone programs, they were on the original reference group that set up the COPE program back in 2013, I think it was, we set it up. The police fully support naloxone. However, when you start going down the ranks, do you know what I mean? The word doesn't always get through to people. It's important that if you've got medication on you, that the medication is, if it's on a prescription, that you've got your name and stuff on it. We've also spoken to the police in several police stations recently and provided them information, and there's stuff on the COPE website, on the Pennington website, information for police that you can give to them to tell people just don't take your naloxone.
Better than I can answer.
Also, I had a client of ours, I'm a counsellor at Turning Point, come last week and tell me that, and showed me his kit that he was trained at. He was trained at Inner Space, and he actually was given a kit with the naloxone. He also showed me a piece of paper that says, I'm allowed to carry this in case they're pulled over by police. So that is a precautionary note.
Yeah, we've got them on the Pennington website. You can print them out. You can print out all the stuff from there.
So if you happen to be providing care and the paramedics arrive and the patient doesn't respond as we would all hope to the first aid interventions and then the administration of some naloxone, then they will end up going to hospital, which is actually a good outcome. Right? It's a very good outcome, whereby we can maintain their care in transit. In the vast majority of cases, the process is actually effective and the person not only breathes up, but usually wakes up to the point that they get to make some choices. Right? Anybody who comes into contact with the ambulance will be offered a trip to hospital. All right? That's what we do. All right? And you've had a substance overdose, whether it was intentional, accidental, or deliberate. All right? We're going to want to try and take you to hospital. A large proportion of our customers at this point decline to travel, but some don't, and they want to go. We're very happy to take them because it's actually advantageous to them, especially given the dose of naloxone that they've just had, because they're going to feel rubbish in about 15 minutes' time. Okay. So aftercare, if people don't wish to come to hospital, it becomes a debate. Was this accidental and inadvertent, in which case that's a different kettle of fish to, actually, Johnny's had 9 ambulances in 5 days and Johnny's actually trying to hurt himself. At that point, we have to make a decision as to whether or not we do get our friends from the police involved, and we have to take consideration for Johnny's well-being into account and that he might actually be trying to kill himself. That's a tough conversation for us to have. The majority of people don't wish to go to hospital and would like to move away from the paramedics as soon as possible. We don't take it personally. We get it. We're scary and we attract police. So to do that safely, they should be with somebody else, preferably somebody who is sober, and they should have somewhere that they can go. Right? So we refer people to all of the services around wherever we happen to be working, all right, to try and give them a place of safety that they can go, all right, and keep people moving. Okay. The naloxone, in case you're wondering, Sean said the fentanyl half-life, 1 to 2 hours. The morphine and the heroin half-life is a bit longer than that. The half-life of the naloxone is under 1 hour. It's about 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Okay. So there is this theoretical point whereby the naloxone will wear off and therefore you will then get your opiate effect back, and you will, but it will be diminished because it will be tailing off. It will be beyond 50% of its probable lifespan at that point. Right? So we wish people to have a plan, have somebody safe to be with, so that they can call for help again if they're needed. The side effect of using naloxone and the dose that is given is that people can often end up, or can end up, with induction of withdrawal. It feels awful, it's harmful for some people, and it is an unpleasant experience. It's the trade-off of a sufficient dose to reverse the effect of the opiate and get you breathing again versus not, and it's a balance which is very difficult to navigate for most people. So if you end up with acute withdrawal and you are unwell, you are still welcome to come to hospital, and that's the message that we want to tell. Before I get to you, ma'am, so the first aid is absolutely fundamental and key. All right? The paramedics will come along, but they aren't the source. They aren't the panacea to all ills. The thing that helps is ensuring that people can receive immediate care at the point that they're using their substances. Norris, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.